Hi guys, this is Ellie from Warrington and Vale Royal College, and this is the fourth of 5 Gimp workshops I've been taking you through. Now on this one we're going to be focusing on how to use the clone stamp tool and also how to use the quick mask tool. Now this is my original image, and what we're going to be doing is actually using the clone stamp tool to remove that scarf in the middle. So you see before, and as we can see, we've got after. Now the whole point of the clone stamp tool is to be able to remove things or hide maybe imperfections that you're not happy with within an image by kind of sampling pixels from one area in that image and placing them over into a new area. So I'm going to be using this beach image. As you can see, we've got several bits of scarves and hats hanging over some branches. The main focus I'm going to focus on here is going to be the red scarf in the middle. Obviously, if you wanted to do something in your own time, maybe if you won't have this same image, you can then get rid of the hats and the other scarves, as well as the shadows. But for this, I'm just going to show you how to focus on the scarf right in the middle. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in to that area just to get a closer look at it. Now your clone stamp tool is up on the left hand side. It's called clone tool. I may call it a clone stamp tool as that's what it's called on Adobe Photoshop, but the clone tool pretty much works exactly the same as it would do on Photoshop. So if you get your head around it on Gimp, you'll easily find it. You'll kind of go with it very, very easily if you ever encountered using it on Photoshop. Okay, so I'm going to click the clone stamp tool. As you click on that, you get a series of options that pop up underneath. Now, you've got this first bar that you encounter is called the opacity. Now, in terms of opacity, it's basically the level of transparency that you're applying. So for this, when I'm sampling pixels and then moving those pixels over another object, in this case the scarf, I don't want to have 100% opacity. I want to make sure it's low, so something around about, I don't know, between 30 to 40% opacity. And the reason for that is that I'll be covering those pixels gradually, and I find it's far easier to blend in certain areas, or in this case blend out the scarf. You can also change the brush size of that clone stamp tool by basically bringing the bar up and down. And you can see how big it is as you hover it over. So obviously that's absolutely massive, so I want to make it far smaller, and that'll probably do at this point. Another only really two we're going to worry about at this point. What I will say though is under here where it says source, you need to make sure that your sample merged, and that's just making sure that you're sampling from all layers. Obviously in this case we've only got the single layer, but if you ever were to do something in the future that's got multiple layers, make sure you press sample merged, and that'll work absolutely fine for you. Okay, so the trick of using the clone stamp tool, I'm just making my brush a bit smaller. Another way to increase and decrease the brush size is a keyboard shortcut. You'll find that under the plus and the minus keys on the right hand side of your keyboard, you've got brackets that are underneath. The bracket on the right increases, and the bracket on the left decreases the size. So I'm tapping those up and down, and it's usually a quick way as you're kind of either drawing, or in this case using the clone stamp tool. It's a lot quicker than maybe going over to the side, but whatever you're more comfortable with, use. Okay, so I'm using a Mac today, so the key that I'm going to be using quite a lot is Command, but if you're using a PC, you'll be using the Control key for this. So first things first, I want to sample an area. So an area on this sky that I want to move over and cover the scarf. So what I do is I'm holding the Command key or the Control key if you're using a PC, and I'm going to sample this area. So I'm going to click. What then happens is now I leave basically the same brush size of what I'm using for what I'm actually wiggling around when I'm moving my mouse, and that's basically indicating that that's the area that I'm going to sample. Now as I come over to the right hand side near the scarf, if I click and hold, and I'm moving my mouse up and down, and I'm holding it down, I'm not just clicking, I'm just holding it down. Now I've just let go of my mouse and I've gone back over it. So I'm clicking, drag, and you notice that that scarf is starting to disappear. And as I'm moving up and down, the area that we sampled on the left hand side is also moving up and down. So it's sampling those pixels from that exact area. Now I'm going to go for it a bit faster and different directions. Now always keep an eye on that sampled area, because the closer I come to the branch, the more at risk I am of actually copying a branch over. So if I do this, for example, you now see that the branch over where my actual clone stamp tool is, I've accidentally copied that. And that's why it's really important to make sure you're keeping an eye on where that sampled pixel section is as you're moving around the screen. Now obviously to undo that, I'm going to press Command Z, or it will be Control Z if you're using a PC. So you can continually sample different areas. You don't have to put the sample down once and then use that forever. The best way to do this is continually sample different areas. So I'm holding Control or Command if you're using a Mac, and I'm just sampling and then moving around again. And it's much better to do this because you're going to get it's going to blend in a bit more. You're not going to have any kind of random lines. And it's again for the same reason we use a lower opacity, and we slowly get rid of something rather than getting rid of something straight off. We can kind of blend better. Now I'm sampling from the right hand side of the scarf. Now this is a bit harder because it's more blue, kind of like a stronger blue up here. So in a bit I might actually have to consider making my brush a little bit smaller so I can make it blend a bit more. Okay, so I'm going to make my brush a bit smaller. I'm going to sample kind of more of the blue up here. So press Command or Control if you're on a PC, sample, and then starting to get rid of that. Now I don't want to get too close to the branch at this point because we're going to be using the Quick Mask tool shortly to kind of make our life a bit easier when we're actually kind of covering something up that's quite delicate. What I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on this and I'll speed this up for you. Okay guys, so I've just got rid of most of that scarf. I've still got a little bit on the branch at the bottom and at the top, and I've also got a little bit on the horizon at the bottom that I'll sort out in a minute. And as you can see, the sky's kind of like blending in fairly well. I mean, there's some areas that probably could do with a little bit of kind of finer detail, maybe adding kind of using a smaller clone brush size just to blend it in. But what I want to focus on now is how to use a Quick Mask tool to allow for kind of more intricate, more tricky areas. So for example, I still want to get rid of this scarf that's actually hanging over the branch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom into that area. And it's kind of, you can see more of the pixels now, which actually kind of helps us kind of identify, you know, the difference between colours. Now the Quick Mask tool it's kind of similar to layer masks that we've used in the previous videos, except it doesn't actually add an additional thumbnail to the layer. What it does do is allows us to kind of select a particular area of it and to be able to basically edit it. So you can find your Quick Mask button right down at the bottom in the far left hand corner here basically. So it's called Toggle Quick Mask. If we click that, what happens is it turns your whole design red. And I'll just zoom out so you can see this. It has like a red tint to it. And that's just indicating that basically nothing at this point has been selected. So I'm just going to zoom back in, back into that branch area. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to get my brush tool. Now obviously with a brush, like the clone tool, you can change the opacity, you can change the size of the brush, but for this we don't really need to worry too much about that. What we're going to do is basically use the brush to draw a line over the segment we want to basically get rid of. So what red we want to get rid of off that branch. So we need to make sure that on your colour, the colour selection, so you should have on the top here black and white. We want to make sure that the white's on top. So in this little arrow, flip it around to make sure the white is on top. Make sure you've got your brush tool, and now basically what you're going to do is you're going to draw a line over that. I'm going to go over it a few times, and I've used quite a soft brush actually, that's why I'm going over it a few times. I'm just kind of guessing where I think the branch should be, because obviously the scarf does hang over it, so it makes it look a little bit fatter. And that'll be it. Now when I've done that, I'm then going to go back down to my quick mask tool and turn it off. What now happens is that I've now made a selection within that branch, and I can use this selection area to be able to basically not worry about going over the edges. So I'm basically going to get rid of this red on the branch first by sampling from the branch pixels using the clone stamp tool. Now this actually is quite tricky because unlike the sky, we had plenty of sky to sample from, and we only had to really kind of keep an eye on our sampled pixels section of the clone stamp tool. But on this, you're going to have to keep an eye on where you're sampling from, as you'll quickly see that you could easily accidentally put sky in where the branch is. So I'm going to sample this area here. As you can see, I've got that square. Obviously, because my brush is quite small, my brush is no longer round, it becomes kind of square. But I'm going to make it a little bigger. So I'm going to sample that. So I'm press Command and click, or Control and click if you're using a PC. Oh, just lost it. Where are we? I'm going to zoom out again. And then zoom in. There we are. Okay. So sample this area. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, as you can see, I'm basically building in that branch. But if I go up too much or down too much, I'll start getting blue in, and I don't want to get blue in this area. So always keep an eye on what you're sampling. So you're going to have to keep going back, making a new sample, going back, because I've already got a bit of blue in there. Now I'm actually going to increase my opacity a tad, just to make this up a little bit faster. So I'm doing exactly the same thing. I'm aiming obviously for the inside of the selected area, and obviously I'm using different sides as well, so different sides of the branch. So obviously to do the right side, I'm sampling more from the right side of the branch. It obviously doesn't mean that you can't. So now I'm clicking sampling, and then click again, sample, click the sample. And it is kind of a tricky process if you're not keeping an eye on it. Sample a bit more from over the right side this time. I'm going to make the brush a tad smaller. And you can probably hear how much I'm clicking. I'm clicking a lot here, because I'm just giving myself to keep an eye on what I'm sampling from. Now, got a little bit of red within that selected area here, that I'll just get rid of. Okay, so that's looking okay at the moment, but obviously I've still got this red on the outside of that branch that I still need to get rid of. And as we've got this branch selected, all we need to do is reverse that selection, so inverse that selection. And to do that, you need to go up to where it says select on the top and go down to invert. And now you probably can't see what's happened, but if I zoom out, you can now see that there's now a dotted line around the edge of this canvas, which indicates that anything on the outside of this branch that's selected has been selected. So we're not selecting the branch, we're selecting the outside of the branch. So I'm just going to zoom back in. Get the clone stamp tool again. I'm going to do exactly the same thing, but I'm going to be basically sampling the blue sky to cover up the rest of this branch. And I'm just will cover up the rest of the scarf. I'm going to increase my opacity a bit more. And I'm going to probably sample pixels here, and then now obviously this is a lot easier doing the outside, as we have got plenty of sky to sample from. I'll do the same for the bottom, underneath. I'm just going to blend this in a bit more now. Under. Now we have got a little bit of red inside that branch there, and we've got a little bit at the top here as well that I probably need to sort out, and I can do that obviously by making a really tiny selection. This is one of the great things about having when you're working actually by the pixel, you can see what pixels you need to fill up basically. Right, I'm actually going to reverse that selection again so I can just sort out the inside of this selection here. So I'm going to invert it, and I'm going to increase my brush a bit more. I'm going to sample, so press Command or Control if you're using a PC, and then I'm going to, there we are, a bit better. I'm going to do okay, so once something I'm happy with that, I'm going to go select and none, so it deselects it. I'm now going to zoom back out. So as you can see now, the branch, I mean, I think if I spent a bit more time with it, it might kind of be a bit more crisper, but the branch is there, the scarf is clearly gone. All we have now is a little bit at the bottom. Now I only left this till last because it's just a little bit fiddly, it just requires me to make my brush a bit smaller. But the same kind of process. So again, we're sampling from an area, so press Command if you're on Mac or Control if you're on a PC, and then I'll make my brush a bit bigger actually, and I'm going to zoom in a bit more as well. And I'm actually going to increase my opacity a bit more. Now, I'm being quite careful here as I'm sampling on a line horizon and trying to keep my selection really straight, but that looks okay. So that's it, guys. So that's how you use the clone stamp tool, and it's also how you can use a quick mask tool. So it's really, really simple. You can use this tool for all sorts of different things if you're trying to hide anything with an image, take something out, or even maybe copy something over. It's great if you want to kind of make maybe distorted faces are quite cool, maybe moving eyes or facial features around. It's kind of a fun way to do it. But hope it's been helpful. It's a fairly easy tool to use. It is a little bit time consuming, but once you get the hang of it, it'll be an absolute well, it'll be great to use basically. Okay, so look out for my last video, and that will be wrap up the 5. But I hope you enjoyed today, and I'll see how you get on. Thank you.